Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Triangle SQL Server User Group main meeting for February. Tonight we're going to have Mark Gordon talking to us all about SQL Audit. Before that, I do want to promote SQL Saturday Raleigh, which will be April 18th, 2020. So you can still submit sessions. We have our call for speakers open until the end of February, unless you're listening to this after the end of February, in which case you can't submit sessions anymore. But you might be able to submit them for next year. It'll be at Wake Tech RTP, Chapel Hill Road in Morrisville, so check that out. Admission is free, lunch is $15 optional, and there will be several tracks of excellent speakers, just an all-around good time. In addition, we do have two pre-cons this year. One is Mark Wilkinson, who is going to talk about PowerShell. The other one is Ginger Grant, who is going to cover Databricks, especially in the data science space. So between those two, should find something interesting. Find out more information of that at sqlsaturday.com/981. And now I'm going to hand it off to Mark Gordon to take us away.
Thank you, Kevin. I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. My name's Mark Gordon, and what I'm going to be going over is setting up SQL Audit, steps to success, hopefully. And I ran into an auditing project last year that went on, and I uncovered all kinds of gotchas. Some of them were my own making. Some of them are things within Microsoft that you need to be aware of, and I felt important to share this with you. This presentation is going to be very basic. I just want to make sure you understand something about it. I am not head of security where I'm at. I'm one of the lead DBAs, but I was working with the security guys on the project, which opened up many other Pandora's boxes, finding out what people really wanted and maybe what they didn't want. So how many here are using SQL Audit right now? Anybody? I know Tom, I know you are. Okay, and some of you are thinking about using it, looking at it? Okay. So let's just jump right on in. What I want to cover tonight are these areas here. Early research, I think you should think about when you start digging into what you're going to audit. Your auditing options. Maybe you don't want SQL Audit. Well, we're going to look at some of the downsides of not using SQL Audit. SQL Audit to SQL Versions. It's changed over its life, what you can and can't do with it. Understanding how SQL Audit works, which is very simple. And understand what it will do, it won't do, and the gotchas that hopefully you don't get bit, but I did, and I have no problem sharing them with you. Again, I'm not head of security, but considering what I went through with the project I had with a group that was dealing with security, of things I felt needed to be done after working on the project. One, when people start talking about auditing, I want to audit the data. I want to audit stuff in SQL. Fine. What? Don't tell me everything. What? Exactly what are you wanting to audit? That alone opened up a Pandora's box. Because they said, well, everything. No, we're not doing everything. You have to tell me what it is you think you want. Okay. And then it would be nice to know why it's being audited so you can keep that in your files. Because if something comes back on you, you know why and who's also asking for it. Know how often they want to read your collection. When you're auditing something, it's going somewhere. What you're capturing is going in some collection. You want to know how often they're going to be reading that, because that affects how you're going to build the audit, maybe. You're going to know, you want to know who will be reading it, and you also want to know how long that collection you have is going to be kept. All right? Those are very important things, and some of the answers you get on this are going to alter how you make your process your final solution. There's a lot of different ways of doing this, but I'm just going to go on the basics. So let's talk about options. Well, there's the old-fashioned options: change tracking, change data capture, temporal table. Sorry about the typo at the end of E. But you'll find that in many cases it's not complete enough. People are going to say, you know, there might be a table you want to audit that has HIPAA data in it. And they may want to say, if somebody goes in and does a select on that one table, I want to know about it. I want to know who did it. But you're not going to get that out of these tables. It's not. These are a lot of these are changes, update changes. Audit's much bigger than that. The other option is triggers. That's not going to be complete enough for really auditing. That's when data changes. You're going to create DML triggers, things like that, and those are changes like deletes, updates, inserts. You're not triggering on a select statement. The other one is profiler or extended events. Now, you can see profilers in red because I know we need to be moving away from that rapidly, and we need to get our skill sets up for extended events. And you absolutely could be using extended events. It's going to probably take some work. There's some things that extended events does that SQL Audit doesn't do as easily. Things you can get out of extended events that SQL Audit may not give you. So extended events are incredibly customizable, but it's going to take more work to build those sessions out to figure out how you're going to do that. And of course, last but not least, SQL Audit. It's made for this. And it uses extended events underneath the covers. It's not using the transaction log. It's using the extended events that Microsoft has built in the extended events pipeline to read whatever it is you want it to do. SQL Audit to SQL Versions. I thought this was interesting. We won't spend much time on this, but you see the first column, second column actually, is 2008 R2, and the next one is 2012 and 14, and the next one is 16 and 17. Microsoft was real stingy in 2008 R2. You notice that Enterprise, Developer Edition, and Data Center were the only way you would, that's what the version you had to buy in order to do full SQL auditing at the server level or at the database level. 2012 and 14, it was pretty much the same thing, but they gave you in Standard Edition server level, not database level. But a wonderful thing happened with 2016 and 17. 2016, as you see here, with a little asterisk. That means if you have SQL 2016 and have at least Service Pack 1, you can do server level and database level auditing for all of these. Of course, BI and Data Center, that's not applicable. And 17 is automatically out of the box, does both. So if you're up to this level, you're good to go. Now, I know there's been some changes, at least from my buddies who've told me, who've seen 19, SQL Server 19, there's been a little bit of changes to audit, and I can't address those tonight because I don't know about them myself. But what I'm going to be talking tonight mostly is 2016, and most of this applies to 17. Yes?
Just my point is this available for Azure SQL thingy?
I don't know. I have not dug into that piece.
I'm just curious.
Tom, do you know?
Azure SQL VM, of course it would be.
No,
But you're talking about
database
database Azure.
or management.
I don't
Yeah,
I don't know. It's a good question.
Yes, Azure DB, no.
That's what I would expect.
Wild guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So SQL Audit.
Get server level access to it.
Not for DB.
Well, I'm going to cover access to this in just a second. It
It was
oh,
a site. It was tangent.
okay. Good.
Azure, you talking
No,
about?
No,
it's audit. So SQL Audit itself it's very simple. There's two main components. There is the server audit. That's at the upper level. I like to use the word collector. You won't find this anywhere. Nobody calls it a collector, but I call it a collector. It is, for those who use extended events, it's basically your session. You build your session, you tell it how often you want it to collect and where you want the output to go. That's really your server audit. Then there's the audit specification, what you want to audit. So the server audit defines your file collection, where you want it, how you want to collect it, where it's supposed to go. And by the way, you can do some filtering on that. And then there is the specification, the server audit specification or the database audit specification. The server audit spec is for the server level, the server level.
Goodbye, lapel mic.
Sorry. And then the database is specifically for a database. Somebody would say, well, I don't want to alter. I don't want to edit all this stuff or look at all of this stuff on the server. I just want to do this stuff on the database. Fine. Don't pick server audit specifications. You want a database audit specification. That's it. There's two things to this. Now, to take a look at where they're at, this is a screenshot of SSMS. And let's look at the server audit first, because this is the anchor, the collector of how everything has to be set up first, and it's really nothing to this. If you open up SQL and look at the security folder and drill down into it, you'll see the audit folder. You right-click and you make a server audit. Ta-da! You just answer a few questions and you're done, and we're going to do one. If you want to when you want to set up the specification, which identifies what it is you want to look at, what do you want to audit, that is not at the server audit. That's a specification. You have a server specification, or you can have a database specification. The server specification is right below the audit folder. You want to create one of those after you create the audit, you right-click, and you build it. And there's nothing to it. It's drop and click. Database audit specification, every one of these databases, every database you got there, user database under security, you see that? Database audit specification. So the server audit is at the server level, the collector. I hate using that, but I think it's a good word because that's really what it's doing. And the specification is either at the database level or the server level. This is what a SQL audit looks like. There's nothing to it. You right-click on the window for the audit. You give it a name. For those of you who are learning extended events, this should look very similar to a session. You define how often do you want it to process the data you are auditing. I've got it here in this example, 5 seconds. Maybe that's too fast. Maybe it's not fast enough. Hopefully it's too fast. But anyway, that's just an example. On audit log failure, if the audit log fails, what do you want to do? The default is continue, right here. Fine, let it try to fix itself. Just keep everything going down the line. Shut down server. Whoa! Very, very unsafe. Tom and I have talked about that on occasion.
Yeah.
They sure did. And then, there you go. Then stop everything. And fail operation has got a strange definition. It's kind of something in between. I've got a screenshot on the next screen. Reading it is kind of confusing under Microsoft's definition. It basically says that if the database command that sent the audit failed, it won't audit, but it makes me believe it fails the command. And I don't know, the description on their site is not quite worded well. So I can't give you an answer exactly what it does, because I'm giving you a couple links to it. When it comes to audit destination, they give you 3 options. One is send it to a file. That's it. Another one is use the application log or the security log that's already on the box. And for me, in my particular solution, I didn't want to use those 2. There's enough garbage in there as there is already. So I picked my own file. And you can pick any location you want. Now, the next one is interesting. Audit file max limit. So you have 2 choices, maximum rollover files or maximum files. Maximum rollover files is what you want. So in this case, you tell it how many files you want to keep before it rolls over itself. Okay? For each file, how big do you want it? Well, I've got this capped at 100 meg. So as soon as the first file fills up, it needs more, it's going to make a second file, and it keeps more. It's going to make another file, and it keeps going until it does a rollover. There's some gotchas on the rollover, which I uncovered accidentally, and it's documented. So this is what you'll normally do as a setup. That's it. This is it. This basically builds the session like you would in events. To some degree, it looks similar to that. When you give it a name, whatever name you give it, it doesn't matter. It will tack on some stuff to the end of that object on the file. It almost looks like a GUID, kind of, but there's some other timestamps in there. So whatever you put in here doesn't stay that way. It gets appended during the process. And we'll look at it here in just a minute. By the way, you can filter. You can actually put a T-SQL filter on this page. Well, wait a minute. You haven't talked about the specification yet. No, I haven't. But you can click on filter and you can put a T-SQL statement in there to not look at certain things. That saved me because these guys wanted a lot of stuff. And some of you who may not have looked deeply at what goes on in SQL Server, the amount of logging of information that goes on in SQL all the time, telemetry stuff kicking off all the time, you may not want that. That's internal. So that one we can talk about later. It's something that I actually am using because there's certain, because of what they wanted me to audit, I was generating a staggering number of logging records. They wanted to log a lot of stuff. So I had to throttle back on some of them, and it was like telemetry things, and that really helped reduce the size. But the point is that you can filter on some things.
So I'm evil auditor.
Yes?
You can get to those files to audit or edit log files.
You could.
Repeat the question, please.
I'm sorry. You can, he's the evil auditor, and you can get to those files to alter the files. You absolutely can. But they're locked while they're being audited.
You can go in there and basically not give the DBA the rights to get to that folder.
That would be true.
And
Yeah.
basically what you do from that standpoint is you go and actually lock him out and give only the service account that's running this
Right.
the rights to get to that folder.
That's right.
And anybody else.
That's right.
So you have to assume that the DBA don't know the password to the service account when he installs SQL.
Which is highly unlikely.
Or that he's hidden in a PowerShell script that deploys the SQL.
Well,
Right.
we'll get into part of that, okay? Because there's a lot of options here. Yes, Tom?
Before you go to the next screen, the other thing you've got up there is you've got the script button.
Yes.
Source control it.
Yes, I agree. Source control that. Once you build it, script it out, and it'll have everything in there. And by the way, the T-SQL statement that you put in there in the filter, if you use one, it will rewrite it. It did mine. I did. I can't remember what I had in there, but when I made the script to source control it, it was like, what? I didn't type that. And it did what I wanted, but it did it a different way. And I couldn't control that. Yes, Solomon?
I don't want to get on tangent, but just regarding what Tom said about the blocking the DBA out and just having the service account do it. The DBA, I would assume it as a sysadmin, has the ability to turn on XP command shell, which then runs as a service account. You
Right.
can then do whatever you want then. I mean, you can't block somebody out of that.
Right.
There's no way.
Okay. But one more thing I want to add is as long as the SQL audit is running, those files you're not going to get in those files. You'd have to stop it. At least I don't think you can. I've not been able to get into them. I've tried some games with it, but I could have missed something. But that you can't, we might try that toward the end if we have enough time. But anyway, the files are running, and when the audit is running, and it's that simple. That's all there is to this.
Do you get any kind of manifest with all the files that says, like, here's the 5 files that we generated?
Actually, I've never found that. It's the file name itself is recorded in the audit itself. So the audit record contains the file that this piece of data came from. So if you end up with 4 files and you're looking at this one piece of data, you know that it came from that file. You will see that in there. But I don't know of any other manifest beyond that. It may exist, but I've never seen it. So key points is queue delay in milliseconds. And I put this up here as just a note that somebody say, well, what should I use? There is no best practice documented anywhere. It depends. It depends on how often you need to send it out. It depends on how often somebody is going to query the collection. And that has an impact on what audit does with it. And some of you may not be aware of this because this is what I caught, and I'll get into it in just a second. On audit log failure, the base most popular is continue, and just make sure you have your file max sets correctly. If you just set maximum file size as 4 and you didn't say rollover, it just stops. It just quits. I don't know why anybody would do that. But there is a gotcha on the file limit, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But this is the continue and the shutdown and some links about this. Audit specification. So you determine if you want to audit something at the server level or at the database level. Just figure that out. Just, how big is this? Just bigger than a bread box or not? And then I like keeping it as tight as it possibly can be. The other thing about this is that once you say, okay, I'm going to audit at the whole server level, fine, that you pick server specification, then you pick your events of what you want to audit. And I'm going to break this just for a second. I'm going to jump over here. There is a link I've given you, and this link has got everything in it. It has got, for server level auditing, these are all the different type of things that you can audit on. And it's important to read the description. I ended up not sitting down, but ended up giving this to the people I was working with. Said, you can't have everything. Tell me what's the most important thing to you. And it caused them to think. And it was a great event because it did reduce stuff that they realized we don't need this, not for what we're doing. Well, good, then it worked. Then everybody learned something from this, including myself. So you pick the events you want once you determine the specification. But there's one little hook about this. Somebody says, well, you got to pick what Microsoft has. Yeah, you do, almost. Microsoft has a stored procedure that you can fire off on your own anytime you want that can load the audit log file with something special that you want. I didn't cover this till about 2 weeks ago. And it's a user-defined audit entry, and there's a link for it down here. I can't remember the name of the stored procedure. But if you wanted to run it, I mean, it still get logs like an event, but what you're logging on is up to you. You define it in your app, in a piece of T-SQL statement, a batch job. You can send something out on your own to the audit log file, and you can have your own message, whatever you want. But it's documented here in this link. I ran across that while I was doing that. So, a server audit specification or database audit specification, there's nothing to it. There is nothing to this. You basically just right-click on the audit specification, say New Server Audit, you give it a name, and you tell it what audit is going to be used for the collection. You pick the drop-downs that you want. What do you want to audit? Done. That's it. Now, these other columns over here, they are available, at the server level, you probably will not be able to pick hardly anything. At the database level, you will be picking a number of these things. I know Tom and I have had chat about this. Now, it's funny, they leave this kind of open. You don't have to pick all of it. You can pick some of it. You can pick part of it. It depends on what you want to do. And I'm going to give you an example of selecting a table with a database audit in just a moment. So here's a gotcha. And this burned me, and I am more than happy to tell you that it burned me because it will possibly burn you, and I want to save you a headache. Those specifications I showed you on Microsoft on the site, please read them very closely. Don't look at just the title. Read it closely. The people I was working with said, I don't know why. I think they said they wanted to capture the logout. The login when it logged out. I don't know why. I'm like, well, sure we can do that. I've got it right here on a Microsoft site. I'm looking at it. Here it is right here. And I'm spun down, and what did I find? There you go. I looked at it. Yeah, I put it in there, and it wasn't working. Well, what's wrong? It's got to be a Microsoft bug. No. It's got to be a Mark bug. No. Mark didn't read. It wasn't a Mark bug. Mark didn't read. Look at this. This event is raised when a contained database is being used. Contained database? What's that? I don't know anybody who uses those. Came out in 2012, and it packages the security model differently than a normal SQL environment. It's kind of a pick up and go, like you would have logins and users in the database. This kind of packages them together as a set. This event, I shouldn't say event, this action, they call these actions, only worked with contained databases. I didn't have any. There's nothing wrong with it. I didn't read my directions. So the point is, when you decide to pick one of these things, please read this very closely and test it. Now, I can tell you, I had a moment where I was testing these on a box that was not completely patched. It was not completely patched with the SQL service packs. And I started building this out, and I was picking the database change group right here, which captures everything about creating a database, created, altered, or dropped database. And I couldn't get it to work on every one of those. It wasn't capturing everything. I can't explain why, but when I had the box patch, all the server patches that put on it, it then started capturing everything. I was saying, Microsoft's got a bug, Mike got a bug. No, our boxes were not patched, and there was something missing. And when everything was up to date, this actually works. This is one of them we're going to use here in a minute, so you'll understand that when you ask it to do that, hold on, because you might get more than what you're asking for in the audit log. So that's server level audits. And oh, by the way, database audit level, some of these action groups are going to see, they're going to be about the same, you'll see. It did the same thing. It does the same thing. This didn't work because it was a contained database. Now, here's a gotcha. This is a good one. And this came from the group I was working with. We want the database name on everything. Why? Well, we want the database name on everything. That's what I can't. What if I'm logging something that you can't get that? Well, it so happens that I did confirm that if you pick an action, something, and if it doesn't track something that is hooked into a database name, you're not going to get the database name. There's no way you're going to get it. So database name will be blank on some of the actions that you pick because it can't get it. Now I can tell you now, extended events, you can use the global actions, and sometimes you can bring in the database field, and this one sometimes cannot. It's just how it's built, how the actions are built in here. The other thing is, in other words, let me reverse that. If you were doing a database specific audit and you're picking up something in the database, and yeah, you're going to see the database name in the audit file. There's a column for it. Logins and database names. Now this was cool. That depending on what your login is doing, and I'm going to try to do this test for you, you may or may not get a database name. So somebody logs in, let's say you're an SSMS. Somebody logs in and they just log in and they type a bad password. If you're tracking failed logins, you will get a failed login in the audit log, but it won't show you a database. You're not there yet. But if you've logged into a database and while you're an SSMS, you try to jump to a database that you don't have access to, it will show you the failed and it will show you the database you were trying to attack. Okay? It does do that because I've done it, I've tested it a couple times before tonight, and I can prove it works. Yes?
For the database name, you said, events that do or do not have a database name attached to them.
Yes.
Do you mean for the ones that don't? Is the distinction basically database level events versus
No.
server level events?
There are some server level events that can capture a database, a piece of database information that is tied to the actual action. I can't tell you which ones are or are not. You'd have to dig into each of the actions to see if it's going to give it to you. So, but that's why I said you need to really test it to see, because I pulled my hair out a couple times. Why is this not getting a database name? I personally believe it should be getting a database name. And I did some searching in a couple of forums. They said if it doesn't actually hit an action that is accessible to a database name for whatever it's tracking, you're not going to get it. You're not going to make it get it. It is what it is in SQL Audit. That's how the action works. So it was kind of like, okay, this is how it is. So the failed logins, I've explained that one. The next one, reading the audit log. Well, how do you read this thing? Here you go. This is the one official Microsoft function that they have built. And it is available to be used. And there's a big gotcha to this in just a moment. Select star from, and the name, this is the name of it's an inline table function, and it's in the master database, and you pass in the path, assuming you're using a file. You pass in the path, and you put in a wildcard, and the name of the extension is SQL Audit. And these other two defaults here are offsets. In this case, the average user wouldn't be using the offset. They'd be dumping the whole thing and looking for something. Run it. Now, you can also view the audit by right-clicking the data itself, and we're going to do this in just a moment. You can also view the collection by right-clicking on the audit and say, view the audit log. And it pops up just like it does in SQL Agent when you're viewing an object. and you can see the files. That's it. Nothing to it. There's nothing to it. Now, here's the gotcha. Hold on to your hat. For those in here are focused on security. And this one blew me away. In order to fire that function, you got to be at least a control server permission or higher. You might as well say you're SA. People say, control server. I don't even remember that in the drop-downs. It isn't there. Control server came out in 2005. There's not many people that have talked much about it. It's been kind of dangling out there. So it's a control server permission. Well, why isn't it in the server role drop-down when I build logins? It's not.
It's not a role.
That's right. It isn't a role. I was getting ready to get to that. It is actually controlled inside the server level for a user. It is this close to SA. The differences are basically deny permissions. Microsoft's got I think I might have even put something on here about this. They've got a site that explains, or actually it's not them, it's some other people that maps what the sysadmin and control server permissions can do, and man, they are on it. Because now I'm going to tell you the rest of the project. But before I do that, I need to mention something about workarounds for this. So how do you get around this? You elevate permissions, which is not a great thing to be doing. Most of us in here don't want to do that. We would never do that. Most of us who are running this are probably the same people that created the daggone audit ourselves. We're the DBAs. So that's not an issue. We're already sysadmins. Then you're going to have to use certificates. And I recommend you go into Solomon's site and or Erlen Samarski's site that talk about using certificates. And that is one workaround of doing it. Okay? That's the one workaround. The next got you that you don't find much about. When you fire off that function, the select function, Microsoft's function, it locks those files. It locks the files. Now, so what? There's a certain condition, and it's hit me. Doesn't happen often. Because in my condition, I have something that runs every 15 seconds, and the user hits it about every 2 minutes. And the files are big. It takes a while to get that data out of there. If, here's the scenario. So let's say you got 4 files. The way audit works is that let's say you have filled up the 4th file, and it wants to go back and do the rollover. It doesn't reuse the oldest file. It doesn't open it up, delete the data out, and re-add the data into it. It doesn't do that. It makes a new file and deletes the old one. If the file is locked, it cannot do the delete. You will have more files on there than you actually realized. You will end up with, in my case, 5 or 6 or 7. And that happened because of bad timing. It's not my fault. It's not the user's fault. Just how this thing works. It locks the files. Now, the process itself, the way it actually works, from what I have read so far, is that, well, how does it actually do the delete? Well, according to the information I have gathered, is that when it processes the data, your timing, your 15 seconds or your 1 minute or whatever, it does all this in there. If something has happened and it has grown, let's say your max was 4, and it has grown up to 8. I mean, you have got a hellacious amount of processing going on with somebody banging that files, and while at the same time it needs lots of space and all this stuff you're filing out, and you've got so many things going on, and you're doing it so fast, and they're hitting it so often, you can have a lot of files. So let's say you capped it at 4, and now you're at 8. Well, that's not great. You didn't expect that. When it processes around, when it gets a moment where it can breathe, it will only delete one of those overages. It will not delete all of them at once. So as the cycle goes through, it knows these other 3 need to be cleaned up. Get rid of them one at a time, next time one at a time, that you can end up having more files than what you expect. Now, how do you deal with it? Well, this is basically paragraph of what I've just told you. One is you alter your frequency of how often you're sending that data out, how often you're processing it, and or you alter how often the data is being pulled. Somebody's pulling that thing a lot, I mean a lot, and you're sending data out a lot and you have a tremendous volume, you're probably going to get hit with this. So I have been a couple times. So the articles, the links I have down here has one guy in here that has a hellacious scenario where he didn't have a couple, he had like 16 over his limit. And the files were big, and he was concerned about swallowing up disk. So what I did to protect myself, how you choose to do it is your own business, but what I did is I built a job, you could do it in PowerShell, that goes out and counts how many files in your folder. If it's over your limit, send yourself out an email. Now, on my system, I might get maybe an email every month that says, you know, at 10 o'clock at night when I run this thing, at 10 o'clock at night you had 6 files. I'll go in and I'll check in the morning. They're gone. It's cleaned itself up. It was able to get a breather for the person that was running them, that it was able to clean itself up on its own. But this is something that you need to be aware of, that it can sneak in and build more than what you really expected. Do we have any questions at this point about this? Anything at all? Yes, Solomon.
In the case where, I don't know if you covered this, but in the case where the file's locked, you can't delete it, so now you have more than the limit.
Yes.
Does it still use the one, or is it that's just historical? And
It's just historical, and it knows which one it needs to clean up. It knows these guys have got data, and I need to get rid of them. So that's how it does it. And it does know the oldest. It keeps track of the oldest from what I have, my documentation I've read. That you won't find much about this, but I can tell you, I can contest to this because it happens to me on occasion. And just not the end of the world. Just be prepared to keep an eye out for it. No, any other questions? Yeah, I bet Pizza's here, isn't it? No? Okay, they didn't come in. Okay. All right. Well, let me go in and let me start the demo. And it's not going to be that involved. It's going to be a couple things, and we can play a couple games if you like with this. So I've got SQL up over here, and I'm going to go to security. And I've made a folder in my SQL work folders called SQL Audit, and I'm going to right-click on Audits. And I'm going to see the name it automatically gave me. Even if I change this, and I'm going to go with every 5 seconds. Continue, go to my folder. I know you're not supposed to type during demos, but in this one I think I should, because I want to show you literally what I'm entering and how I'm doing it. No big deal. Audit log, da-da-da. Maximum rollover files. And notice it automatically clicks unlimited. No. Unlimited number of files, I'm going to say 4. Unlimited space? No, I'm going to say 100 per file. And you can click reserve disk space before to set this up to reserve all the disk space you need up ahead of time if you want to. I don't do that. That's it. You're done. You say, okay. Now, by default, this is it right here. It's not on. You'll see this little icon, little tick down here. It's not enabled yet. It really isn't. Okay? So let me go to the folder and show you what's going on the folder. Just one moment. I had this linked before. I just got to dig a little bit for it here and go to Audit, SQL Audit. Nothing's there yet. Now, I'm not going to turn it on because I'm going to make a specification first. So let's go back to SQL. I want to make a server specification. I'm going to look at the whole server. So I'm going to right-click. I've got a dummy one down here. Don't worry, it's not tied to anything. I'm going to make a new one. And notice it gives its own funky name. It doesn't matter. I'm going to get rid of that. And when you put this in, you got to tell it the audit that you want it to use. You can have more than one audit on the box. For a collector, you can. I want it to use the one we just made, Demo Audit. Almost done. What do I want to audit tonight? Well, I'm going to audit failed logins, and I'm going to audit database change group. Ooh. This is kind of leading you into peril when I'm doing it on purpose. Ta-da, that's it. You're done. There's nothing else you have to do. Say, okay. It is now mapped, whoops, excuse me. What did I just do wrong?
You already did
Yep, yep.
Click on that. Excuse me just a moment, guys. All right. What
Just
did I?
have to change the name.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There we go. All done. Now, I'm going to turn on the demo audit, enable it. Done. Now, I haven't turned on the specification yet. What is it doing? Well, let's go look. It made a file already. Well, I didn't have a specification. That's right. It logged that it started up. That's basically what it logged. Notice the funky name along the side of it. That's in there. That it keeps. You're not going to be changing that. Okay. So now let's go ahead and enable. Let's enable the specification. Ooh. Okay. Let's go look at the demo audit. View the audit log. There it is. There's the one record. Now, you can scroll across the top. Audit session changed. I started the doggone thing. That's basically what it's logging. And you can go down here and through all the columns. They always look the same, no matter really what you do. The audit log always looks the same. Now, if you had SQL statements in here, you'll see them in the statement column. You have plenty of ugly XML in here. And the file name. There's the file name right there. And some offset about where that row is, as well as tons of other information that you may or may not use. Now, I'm going to talk about something briefly that my good buddy Solomon ran across and posted something at Microsoft site that told them they need to deal with this. Remember I told you you could audit, you could filter a SQL audit, okay? This, that's not what it really is under the covers. This display is actually turning a cat into a dog and turning in, Solomon, what is it a GUID or a big int that they're using? You remember? Is it?
The action ID?
Yeah.
Action ID and class type are both ints.
It's, okay, it's an int, and they turned it into the word. So if I run, and I will in a moment, if I run the select statement from the Microsoft function, go ahead.
To clarify,
Yeah.
the data coming out of the log
Yes.
is initially is the short code.
Yes.
The 2 to 4 character
That's right.
code.
But the filter,
But when you filter on it, the documentation says whatever the columns are coming out of the log, those are the values you filter on.
and that was wrong.
They didn't
Yeah.
tell you that for 2 of those columns, no, it's not.
That's right, exactly. And that's what I wanted to share with you. So he wrote up an item for them, and yes, yes, yes.
Well, none of those are right.
Neither one. It depends on what you're looking at what spot you're looking at it.
So basically, coming out of the log, it'll say like, say G for grant. According to the documentation, you could use G as a filter on action, of G, but you'll get this weird error that doesn't tell you
Right,
what it is.
right.
So it's not the word grant, it's not the letter G, it's like 520,000.
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The statement that Solomon made was that on the screen here, the action ID internally inside the actual process is actually a number. This is being translated from a number into the actual description of it. But as he indicated, the Microsoft site says it's a text field if you want to filter on it. And it's not a text field if you want to filter on it in the audit object. Yes, Mike?
So what does the 5-second mean?
That means it's gonna wait 5 seconds before it processes what you wanted to audit and send it out to your file.
So it's gonna write every 5 seconds?
Yeah, it's gonna process meaning write and clean up the collection.
10 actions, all 10 get written every 5,
It only gets written once. It knows it's not gonna
10 things get written at the 5-second mark.
yes. You have 1,000 things in there and it'll write them all at once.
No, that's the max it will wait, right?
Correct.
Yes.
So this is stored in the ring buffer. and-
Yes, just like extended events or the buffer. Yeah, it's very similar to that. It's very almost identical to that.
Right, it's basically
Absolutely.
Or, I wasn't sure if you were gonna cover this or not, or until you read from the log file.
I think it's at the process level from what I've read. It gets flushed at the process counter.
No, I'm saying it's, when you set up, to flush, like the delay or whatever.
Yes.
You already covered.
Yes.
X number of seconds.
Yes.
It will flush at that interval.
Yes, exactly correct.
Except when every time you go to read from the log, it flushes it immediately. So you keep reading.
That is an excellent question. Whether it flushes it immediately, which I believe it would,
No, that's not
or
the question. I'm saying it absolutely. I've done a lot of.
okay, it has. It flushes right before you read.
That's when
Okay.
I do my testing on this.
Okay.
I don't want to wait for the interval.
Okay.
I just basically do a select from the FN, log that you were showing.
Okay.
It flushes it immediately.
Good. So Solomon's statement was that his testing proves that it will flush if you do a read on it, because we know the files are going to be locked. It's going to flush it on its own to make sure you got the most current stuff.
I'm assuming because it can't union between what's in the log file and the buffer.
I understand that.
So it probably just flushes it.
Obviously, the only other option would be is that it can't flush it and it waits until you're done, and that would be the only other option. I don't know which one of those. In your case, you've tested it and you believe that it flushes before.
It was very consistent.
Okay,
You
cool.
do the select on the FN
Yes.
log or whatever,
Right.
or read log file.
Right.
It flushes it immediately.
Okay. Yes, Ray.
Here's a question. So let's say there are a lot of activities and a lot of inserts, updates.
Yeah.
whatever. So the memory pressure,
Yes.
how does that impact activity that's going on the server and our ability to log?
Yes, it does, because it's going to have to go somewhere in the buffer, in the ring buffers. And that is one of the reasons why somebody might say, I'm going to flush it maybe once an hour. No. If you have a lot of activity, that may be a really bad idea. That it's not going to, I don't know of it flushing on its own under pressure. I've never seen anything written about anything like that. So I don't have a complete Microsoft answer to you, but I think that's where you have to find the sweet spot of figuring out what's realistic for flushing it out. Because Extended Events has the same issue, right? That you have to evaluate the ring buffer, and Extended Events has, warned you that, well, some of these ring buffers are going to roll off by the time you get to work on the file if you send the data out and you play those games of the sweet spot, trying to find out what's the best size and what's the best timing for it. But in this case, it's time. Did you want me to stop for the pizza, or do you want me to keep going? Okay.
So, yeah,
That's all right. No, I don't want it.
unless you want to stop, I've got the camera going just at the screen, so this
Okay.
camera's not showing the mad rush for pizza right
Okay.
now.
You're all
Okay.
missing out.
Well, let me let this sit just for a second. I'm going to look for a couple things here.
The other thing to be aware of is if you do a file, be aware and watch and see how big it grows and stuff, because depending on how much you're gathering, it's like, I had my boss basically go, we want to audit all this, and I told him how much disk space I need to audit all that, to hold all
No,
the
thank you. I
files.
appreciate it.
He says, never mind, let's turn it down a little bit. It was gonna be about 3 times bigger than the SQL Server itself.
Right. That's right.
Speaking of that, I'm assuming if you log the events to the system event log, you can't read them directly. Like,
From the function. The function's built for file functions.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
You'd have to find. You're right. Not directly. I guess you'd find another way of reading the security log. That's a very good point, Solomon.
One thing I'll mention is that if you do dump it to the event logs, you use something like a scraper for Prometheus or something along those lines, that you might be able to extract the data
Sure.
and then take that information and pull
Sure.
the logging out, throw it somewhere else where people can play.
Yeah, put it in the Splunk or something.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
If you don't have his scenario, the easiest thing to do is actually just dump it to a table.
Yep.
And then give them read rights to that specific table and then query.
Yeah, I would have been done. I'd have done it myself, and it would go off to another scenario.
If you have a reasonable person that
Well,
will
I had very unique requirements that were put on me on this project. So,
Mine, I dump to a table every
Yeah.
night. I just go.
Right.
And filter it from there. Yeah, filter and pure it.
wait, you can dump the audit log to a table?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Just
Sure
not
can.
the file or the event system
Just dump the output to a table, just with a select into.
Oh, sorry, no, sorry, I thought you meant log directly to a table.
No, no, no,
Read the log, you do it.
You just read it and select it and,
File,
yeah.
and you read that to the table?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what, of course you have to make sure that you didn't duplicate your, your file, your data.
Doubling the data space.
Yes, you are, yeah.
But you could filter during that insert to only show what they need to see. So if you want to audit more,
Right,
and you want to show this, that you can only see for your own database, you can filter it out to only show their database.
right,
I think I pull in like maybe 5 fields, 6 fields, because in a PII audit, I want to know, who are you, what time did you do it, where'd you come from, and what was your query,
right, exactly.
you know? And
Because you
then I,
capture select words.
yeah, so I just filter it all the way out, and then I basically email it to them.
Because most people really, in most systems, you're not all that interested in what select queries are about.
Yeah,
Right,
But you're probably interested, like, if somebody is using a non-approved application and running a select query, you want to see it.
well, in PII, I want to know that you're selecting on a PII table.
Right,
What
but
are you doing looking at that
But you
table?
don't care if it comes from the application that is designed to
No,
select that table.
no.
Right,
You say,
right.
I'm hooking up access or
No.
Excel to the database, I'm selecting the data.
right,
No, because I'm using actually a filter.
Right.
That will basically filter out to where it's basically now just non-serviceable accounts.
right, exactly. Mine was similar to that. I had to get rid of, I actually had to filter out some things on a principal name to help get rid of the telemetry messages that were going on, because the amount of data pumping through this is just staggering,
It is.
depending on what you pick. I mean, it's breathtaking. And in my particular case, the end user ended up, they're the ones that are loading it into a table on their end. That's what they were doing. I said, well, wait a minute. My files are going to be rolled over every so often. Well, we don't care. We're bringing it over into our database. I said, really? Yep. So we're taking everything you're doing, we're loading it into our database with a routine that makes sure we don't load it twice, and we're collecting it on our end. Okay. All right. That's what your solution is, and that is it. But this one, I wanted to show you. I'm going to run the audit function that dumps the file, and I've already put the name in there, demo audit wildcard SQL audit. So let's go over here and let's jump in here. Here we go, and run that. Hopefully I've got it okay. There's the one record. Now look at this. This is what kind of Solomon was talking about. That here, we open this guy up to look at the audit log. The action ID is a full description. From the audit file, it's not even a number that he explained. It's 4-character type. So it's a very bizarre design, should we say, to get this stuff out of here. You can get this into that other word, but believe it or not, it's not simple. Microsoft did not make a clean hierarchy of this. You have to use the table 2 different ways. One way it maps against one field, another way it maps against another field. It's the craziest thing you've ever seen. I had to post my question on the forum. One guy responded that this is how I did it, and I'll show it to you in a minute. It's crazy that you would think that Microsoft would have a clean structure, that here are your actual, actually it's the, Solomon, what is it, the class? I think, yeah, the class type. This is the class type. They have class types. Under class types, they have other type of types. It doesn't work that way. There's duplicates. And you have to filter through this. You have to join on different fields. It's nuts. But anyway, I just want to show you when you dump it, the fields are pretty much the same, except that some of the stuff is actually not already converted into readable values in some cases. Yes, Solomon?
If you go back to the create, I think it's the audit specification screen, I think you can see the structure there. If I remember, I haven't done this in a bit, but I think the issue that you were having with getting the 2 different levels of data,
Yeah.
there's a generalized grouping, and then there's within there specifics. So like there's a grouping of object. Well, what kind of object?
Yeah. Yes. And
This object, this other kind of object, this kind of object.
Right.
They're all under object.
I tried that.
It's,
Right, exactly. And I couldn't get that to map. I was playing games with I'll show you all what he's talking about when we get time here in just a minute. That if you really wanted to turn this value, AUSC, because this is what's in your file. This is what's in the file. If you want to figure out what that is, I'll show you the script to do it. It's just odd. Anyway, so that is, the specification is on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a database. So hold on to your hat.
The other thing to denote while you're doing that is that if you've got this on a cluster, don't forget to put your file path of where you're
Yeah.
sending the files
Yes.
on each node.
Yes, exactly.
It's gonna fail over to
Exactly. Exactly. So,
deploy it,
exactly.
because it's in master and stuff.
Sure. So I've just created a database. All right, you ready? Whoa! Holy smoke. These are all the things that were fired off during the creation of a database, and Microsoft considers that database change group includes changes to a database, so it may have created the database, but it also made changes to the database. So there's the creation of it. And in just a minute, you'll see the SQL statement. All right, there they are. And it fired off each one, the creation, and every single alter command it has to make after it created it. All of them are there.
Well, that's everything it scripts out when you tell the script it in.
I'm sorry?
That's exactly what it does when you say right-click on the database to script it, right? It's all
Yes.
those lines that you never.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm just sharing with you, you're going to get everything that you normally see in this thing. So when people pick things to audit, that's why I made a comment that it's great to test to truly show what you're going to get, the sheer mass volume of what you're going to get. Now let me try a login failure. All right, watch this. I've got a guy here, a fake person named Ziggy, and I'm going to try to connect as Ziggy, and I'm just going to put in a bad password. Right, let's go see what it does now. Ooh, wait on. There it is. Login failure. Now look at the message. Login failure for Ziggy. Password did not match. Blah, 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 blah. Fine. No database name. Now Ziggy happens to have access to demo, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to connect. I'm going to type in the right password, and then I'm going to jump over to the database that he has access to, which is demo.
So while Mark's doing that, we're repeating something Andrew said.
I'm sorry.
That's the real reason. The reason there, instead of the normal, you did something wrong error message that shows
Right.
up to the user, that's the actual
That's the
reason
actual
why
reason
you
why.
weren't able to authenticate.
Right. Good point. So I'm going to open databases. It's going to hang a little bit while it's going through and figuring out what it can get to. The only thing it has access to is demo. Okay. Give it a second. All right. I'm going to open up demo. Okay, I'm in demo. I'm going to go to bulk test. Obviously, you know what's going to happen. It's going to blow because it doesn't have access to bulk test. Let's see what we get now. Whoa, holy smoke. Now, a lot of these login failures occurring. I don't know why I got that many, but I did.
It's very persistent.
Yes, it is. So my point is that, and I get this in our stuff too, that sometimes you'll get multiple messages out for the same thing. Yes, Solomon?
Quick question. Regarding the login failure and not getting a database name, have you tried logging in and specifying the database and not just using the default, the login's default database?
You want to try that? Okay, let me get rid of this.
You did try it.
Let me disconnect and just start over with this. Connect in, and I'm going to change Ziggy to a default database of demo.
Well, you could just do it in Management Studio.
I was,
I would just either change the connection.
Yeah.
Or go to a command prompt and do SQL CMD and specify the database. It has to do with the connection itself.
I totally agree with you. So what is it that you want me to do?
So try to connect as Ziggy. I'll turn it off so people can hear.
Okay.
Try to connect as Ziggy, but before you say connect, go to options.
Gotcha, and pick the database.
Yeah.
You want me to go in as his real name, as his real password?
No, fake password.
Okay.
So that we can see what the message shows.
Gotcha. All right.
You can't connect to us, so just type in a database name like demo or
All right.
or even something that's not a real database. Who knows?
But does it have to be a database that's within there?
No, I'm saying the connecting database should be the one that you do not have access to.
Well,
Right.
if you type in a wrong password.
So let me type in the word test me. He is not in there. That's a fact. Okay. So let's connect. Failed. Let's go look at it again.
Password did not match.
Yeah, so line 43.
Right there.
What if it's the password is correct? but you
Well,
got the wrong
I thought it
database?
was. Let's try it again. Let's do it again. Ziggy. Now try it again. Test me. Connect. This is different. The other one, the password was not correct. That was my mistake. Sorry about that.
No, that was
Let it-
the best I wanted to see.
Yeah. See what shows up. Okay. Run it again. Now this is interesting.
Added 2 lines.
Failed to open.
Supposed to be specified database.
But the database name, again, what I'm showing you is that the database name is still not populated in this column. That was the point I was trying to talk about. I was just trying to say this one column's not there, but the other information is still logged in the error message.
Thank you for trying that.
That's all right.
Since I'm old and almost quiet, it says the database name in the string, but not in the column?
Correct.
That's correct. Yes, that's the one thing that the team I was working with was like, we want it all the time there. I'm like, I can't give it to you. Now, with extended events, you could, if you were getting into a database. I mean, extended events, you can go in there and say global action list, and you can drop down and pull database name into something that you didn't even think was possible, and it'll give it to you, because I've done it, and it's actually in the Pluralsight training program. That's one of the features of the global action setups for it. But anyway, that's it. So that's the server setup. Now let me do one more. Let me turn off, disable the server spec. Well, the audit's sitting there on its own, doing nothing. And now I'm going to go to the database. And I want to show you, this is one that's probably for Tom and myself. I got a database here that might have some HIPAA data in it. And I got a table in here. It's not called HIPAA, it's just got country. Some of the countries in it, it's only got about 3 records. But let's just say that is a secure table. And we want to know anybody that went after that table. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to go in here. I want to make a database audit specification, which I believe I already made for us. Yes, I did. Okay, this is one we're going to use, and the audit I want to go to is demo audit. All I picked was select, the object class, the schema, the name of the table, and I want to look for one guy. If you want to look for one person, that's the principal name. If you want to look for anybody, you change it to public. That will grab everybody in the world in there. And if you say, I don't care about the selects, I only want updates. Well, fine, there's an update in here too. Or when he deletes it, or when he inserts to it. That's it. Now I'm going to go in here in just a second, and I'm going to do a select on as Ziggy, because Ziggy's still logged in to that table. We're going to turn it on. Good. And notice I'm using the same collector. I'm using the same SQL audit. The other one's turned off. I'm not sending data to, this isn't on and this isn't on. The only thing going to demo audit is the database specification right now. You can have more than one going to it. I'm not telling you that's a great thing to be doing because you might have a hard time figuring out what you're auditing. I think it would be wiser to have a separate audit collecting something different instead of having multiple things all coming into this mess. But that's just my opinion. So demo audit is running, the database audit is running. I am Ziggy down here. I'm going to open this up and I'm going to go to demo. Just a moment. Here we go. I am Ziggy. Let me open up. I am the walrus. Here we are. Sorry, I just had to put that in there. It just felt appropriate. Here we go. Fine. Let's go look at it. Let's go run it. There it is. Now notice I got 2 records. This is interesting because I've seen this before on some stuff I've been testing at work. Look at what it's doing. Look at that. So the select statement that I ran was this one, but it ran this one first. Anybody have any ideas why it did that?
The row counts at the bottom.
Can you make it
Get the
a little larger?
I'm sorry. Sorry, folks. I don't have an answer for it. I'm looking for brilliance from some of you here.
Can you make it a little larger?
I don't know if I
Bottom
can.
left-hand corner,
There we go.
the 100%.
Or I think control and then the mouse wheel.
Here we go. Got it. Let me break this down a little bit better. Now, if I run the select statement again, it won't do this again. It did it one time. That's what I found out in my research. If I go and run this again, first off, let's look and see where we're at. We have generated 47 rows. If I run the select again, go dump it again.
Oh, I think I know.
Okay, hang on. 48, it only did it one time. The new select statement is the select statement that we expected. And notice the database information is all there.
Can you go back?
Yeah, could go back to the select statement.
Yep, the one that's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, the case statement one.
Yep.
With the case.
Let me open it up.
I think your hint is that very first part, because you can just have it in a memory optimized table. And probably just doing a check whether to have it in.
Maybe
the
so.
To query from the memory optimized one, and then next time when it runs the execution plan, it knows, oh, it doesn't have. a memory
That's an excellent,
optimized
that is an excellent thought, that's where that's coming from.
That's my guess.
Could be.
What was your select statement?
Select star from the table was it. That's all I did.
That's doing a count.
Yes, it is.
Count from sys partitions.
Yep.
Um,
Counts as partitions, part of the test statement.
So I have an idea. Can you go to view?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then it's under the view 20.
Or is it, you want me to go under tools and options?
No, it's is it out? Yeah, go to output, I think, yeah.
Output.
It's yep, right there. Yeah. And then go right telemetry.
Yep.
Scroll up a little bit.
There's nowhere to scroll. Oh, you mean down here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see if it's in there.
Man, there's a lot of stuff in here. Jeez. God. Whew. 536. This is.
When you're in an IDE like this, and you're running queries, the IDE can be running queries in the background that you're not aware of.
I agree.
Right, that's,
So,
Yeah.
that's what I was getting at, because this window right here often shows you something like that, and if you were using Object Explorer, like if you've done stuff in there, the drop down right there where it says telemetry,
Yes.
there's another entry for Object Explorer, and you'll see all the queries that it's running.
Okay.
So it's possible that, like, IntelliSense,
And maybe it did because notice
that it was
that
basically-
this is 7:51. It's 7:54. We haven't been here for 4 minutes looking at this, I don't think. This is the last thing it ran. 7:53, 7:52. There's 1 and 2 seconds apart. That's it.
Huh.
But anyway, I get this, when I prepared this, I was working on 2 different machines, and both of them were doing this. I would get two, for the first time I ran the select, I would get 2 entries in there, and one of them always looked like that.
The audit log,
The what?
the audit log, the entries that were shown, that showed this?
Yes, sir.
Does it show the session ID that ran it?
That's a good idea. Let's take a look. I think it's probably showing principals. Hang on. Find this transaction ID. Session ID, yes it does. So let's go to the bottom. It's me, number 60. That is right here. Ziggy is 60, and all 3 of those came from me. That's weird. It just, I don't know.
Well, it could have injected that prior to.
No, I understand.
Right, I mean, IntelliSense has its own session,
Sure.
and Object Explorer is connected separately,
Right.
but it's possible.
Exactly. And
How often does this show up? Because you said, like, when you run it again,
it won't show up again.
but for how long?
I didn't test.
Could you log onto a different account and see a different session?
We can try it.
For example, if you ran it again from, went to a command prompt and ran it from SQL CMD, would that show up?
Let me kill the connection. Connect again. Okay. Let me kill this again. Disconnect. Get rid of all this. Start fresh. That's why I was dying to do this session tonight, is to show you all this weird stuff I ran into. It's really cool, some of it.
The one thing to denote that you were saying, if you turn on public, it is going to capture all your service accounts.
Yes,
that's
everything
touching
in the
that
world.
table.
Yeah.
So watch your disk space again.
Yep.
Watch your file space.
Okay, so we are at 48 rows. This is a new connection with Ziggy with a new query window. Select star from DBO table or country. Run. All right, here we go, sports fans. Get rid of this. This is 60, that's the old one. There we go. 49 rows, one more. There it is.
Oh, there.
Right down here. It only did it once. That's it.
Some,
Bizarre. So,
Well, if you want to, maybe copy that, with query, it's in the query, have it now, maybe copy that to clipboard, close Management Studio, restart Management Studio, and see.
oh, sure, we can do that. Let me do that. Let me save this off.
Because that's one thing you have not.
Actually, I've already saved this. So I'm going to shut down all of Management Studio.
Shut it down, start it, look at that.
And I think it will cause it to do it again. You will see the double the first time.
Studio, then to save it in memory.
Right,
Oh, sure. True.
right. Let's see what happens. I just thought sharing this was cool. Some weird stuff that it does internally, so which means when you pick things for your audit, be prepared, really prepared of what you think you're going to get. And that is, that's what I ran into. So let me go into here. And now let me use a dump of the file.
I can't imagine why SQL Server on its own would do that extra query.
I agree. Okay, there we are. We have 49 rows. Now I'm going to log in as Ziggy. I'm going to go to server. I'm just going to let it go find itself. See, I think it's going to do it again because it's a new session. It's a full new connection. I think it will. Here we go. There we go. Give it about 5 seconds and we'll go dump it again. It was 49 rows. 50. Whoa, it didn't do it. Holy smoke.
It's because you're looking for it.
That's right, Kevin. That's right. It's me. It's my fault. There it is. Darndest thing I've ever seen.
one of the neat things, I know you said you weren't going to talk anything about 2019, but
Okay, go ahead.
2019 is actually with SQL Audit, if you classify your data,
Okay,
which you should be doing for government laws anyway, is that you can then turn on SQL Audit to watch your classified fields.
oh, cool. That's outstanding.
that's gonna be really huge to allow you to watch that PI and HIPAA data.
Sure.
I don't know whether they're gonna get down to you to allow you yet to do the field level, because right now, of course, you didn't say it, but right now, you've gotta do it at the table level.
Yes, you do.
It's not down to the
No,
individual field
that's
level.
right. So it's at the
It'd be
table.
very nice to be at the individual field to say, if someone queries the social security number,
Right,
then show me an audit.
right,
I don't care if they query the rest of the fields in the table.
right. And that would be cool. Are you telling me they're going to have that in 19?
That's in 19.
Oh,
the
wow.
data classification.
Well, there you
I
go.
don't know whether the field level's there yet, 'cause I
Okay.
haven't tested it, but,
Okay.
but definitely the data classification's in 19.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. That's excellent. And what I've done here is given you a bunch of other links you can go into of other issues people have had and options they've had of setting things up. But that's all I have. Any other questions? Yes, Solomon.
Andrew was wondering if the issue wasn't, I was thinking it's Management Studio, but he's wondering if it was the audit, the server audit that was doing that extra query. So could you,
I turned it off.
what?
I turned it off. The server audit's not running right now. The server specification's not running right now. All,
The server audit, disable the audit,
okay.
enable it.
Let's do that. Let's do a quick change real fast. I know we're almost done here, but it won't take but a second to do the test. I'm going to go up here. I'm going, see right now, but see the audit isn't, the server audit isn't doing anything. The server audit's turned off. So the audit collector is just naked right now. All it's doing is reading the database audit. So that doesn't have anything to do with it.
When did you turn it off?
I turned it off before I rebooted. I turned it off before I added it in. You see this right here? Hang on. Let me get up here to it.
No, but that query was specific to that table.
Yes, that's right.
Memory optimized. Kind of makes me believe that either now or at some point there was a limitation on auditing if you had memory optimized tables.
I don't.
That's what it looks like.
Okay.
They're checking is their data.
You think it's checking? It's checking ahead of time?
That has not been hardened to this.
Okay.
And if that's something they're putting in there to check as part of the audit, they need to trigger a flush to this.
Maybe
something
so.
Like that memory optimized table. Because I mean, that's kind of what it looks like. They're
I know.
checking if there is a memory optimized part of that table.
I mean, you did have it enabled because it captured the select statement,
I know, but that test we just did, they're all turned off.
but then it wouldn't have captured the select statement.
No, the select statement's at the database level. That's the one I turned on.
Right, no, what I'm saying is, there's an actual, not by the specification, I'm saying the server audit,
Okay.
master audit thing that does the collecting.
Yeah, but it doesn't have a specification tied to it other than the database specification.
Right, so, but disable it.
It won't do anything then.
Right. So disable it, re-enable it.
Okay, so you want me to disable the database one and then re-enable it?
Or I was gonna say disable, maybe both.
Okay, here's what we're going to do. We'll disable both.
Delete them.
We're going to disable both.
I mean, if it's something that's being cached by SQL Server,
Yeah.
disable turning off the
Okay.
audit at both levels should.
I'm going to disable it. I disable the specification. I'm going to disable the audit
Right,
right here.
and then just immediately go back and re-enable them both.
Okay, now I'm going to enable the audit.
Yep,
Now I'm going to enable the database.
yep.
Okay. Now you want me to have Ziggy fire a query off?
Do the select from country.
Okay. SPID 62. Go back to what it was. It was 50 rows. 54 rows. See what we got.
Well, you'll not be enabling to say.
Well, you're enabling.
Oh, I enable the enabling of the objects. Those are still
Yeah,
kicked in.
yeah,
It still did one select,
You just did one select.
and that's it right there. So, it is what it is.
An example of real life of us using it is we capture this on, just like he's doing.
Hey, Mark?
And then we,
Yeah. Hang on, Mike, just a sec.
then we filter out the service accounts.
Sure.
And then we basically put it in a table, and we email the results to the audit management team so that we can see every query that happened against the PII table. Every day.
That's excellent. That's perfect. Yes, Mike?
Copy the text in that window and close that yellow tab, and then open up a new tab.
Okay, okay, so you want me to copy this,
Yes, and then close the.
Kill that.
Close the tabs.
and you want me to get rid
Close
of,
all the tabs.
Close that tab.
you want me to get rid of this too? Okay.
We already tested this when we shut down.
We just tested.
No, but I want to leave Management Studio running, I just want to close these tabs.
Okay.
Probably also close.
All right, so here we go.
Explorer's maintaining a connection as well.
I'm Ziggy. There we go. I'm going to go back. I'm going to do the dump. New file, and it can't be Ziggy. It has to be me, because Ziggy does not have permissions. He does not have control server permissions. 55 rows,
So just one extra.
one extra, so it made no difference. So anyway,
So, okay, one last thing. Do a DBCC with a free system cache.
Free prop.
No, system, to get rid of all of it, to get everything. And then in parentheses, you need to do a string for all. It's gotta be in quotes, single quotes.
done.
Okay,
Now what do you want me to do?
same thing,
Same thing, run your queries.
I'm just going to run this one.
yeah.
First off, how many rows the other one have? It had 55.
Well, we might get some extra rows for,
We shouldn't. The only thing's running is select.
right, but when you under the, when you.
But I don't have anything at the server level. The only thing I've got is the database level.
I know, but, okay.
Okay, here we go. 56 rows, 1. There it is. No difference.
So what have you done, rebooted and Dr. Easy?
Ta-da! Mystery.
Further research is required.
Okay, so we've had a good time with it. So if there's no other questions, thank you all for this.
This entry anytime you do a select star?
I'm sorry?
Do you see this entry anytime you do a select star?
The testing I've done at home has been anything I've done a select
So
star.
if you were to create a new table right now and do a select star on it, you would get an entry for that.
Yes.
There's got to be something that makes sense to check.
At least let me step back. I shouldn't have said yes. I didn't do a create table. If I started fresh, I would always get this. Fresh meaning I jumped onto the box, brand new for the day, the server just started up, my personal laptop, and it would do this one time. For the select. At the database level. Anyway, that's what, at least for me. Okay, everybody, I guess that's it. Thank you for everything.
All right, so wrapping things up for tonight. Next week, we're going to have Hiram Flightus talking to us about sentiment analysis within SQL Server. And I want to wrap things up again by promoting SQL Saturday Raleigh, April 18th, 2020, SQLSaturday.com/981. With that, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you for being here in person. Have a wonderful evening.